Hi, welcome to our second Automate Together. This is our more relaxed format where we sit down and in a completely unrehearsed fashion, we go through automating a real world website, hopefully a real world example or as close as we can get. And yeah, we do everything live. And the objective is to sort of obtain a script that we can write in a reasonable amount of time in a fully manual fashion, and something that is also robust enough to run a few times at least. And we get this down in an iterative fashion, right? So the idea is start with nothing, inspect the page, figure out how things look, and iterate quickly to build a functioning, stable script. Today, we are going to look at none other than reddit.com. So we're gonna have a couple, hopefully we can fit more than one scenario in there, but you never know until you start automating. So you can always run into some some websites might be more friendly towards automation. Some might have like active countermeasures. Some might just be chaotic enough that serves as a countermeasure in and of itself. And we're going to take a look at reddit.com and see what we can automate. Maybe starting with something easy, like let's see what we could do here would be we could just do a quick script just going through the search functionality. We could look for Playwright. There is a subreddit called Playwright. It is about writing plays, at least as of today. What we can see is that, what we could check is just, we could just perform the search and then assert that this text is showing up as the title of the subreddit, if you will. So that way I could have this scheduled and essentially have a check running, which will alert me whenever this description changes, and this pretty much very quiet subreddit actually becomes or gets taken over by people who are using Playwright, the tool, right? So let's start out with this scenario, see how that goes. Let's see if we run immediately into some surprise or if this goes smoothly. So I've already created my file here and initialized my Playwright project. And what I'm going to do now is, pretty much go ahead and get things rolling. So just do a const chromium and do a require Playwright here, just kicking the basics off. As we've seen previously, there's a bunch of ways that we can go about making the iterative process of automation easier for us. In this case, I'm just gonna use headless.false and when launching the browser, and that will essentially allow us to take a little peek at what's going on every time we run our little script here. All right, now that we're taking care of starting the browser, initializing the non-default context, opening a tab there, and kind of closing everything afterwards, we could also just omit the context.close for what we're doing here, which is quite straightforward. Everything starts with the await page.goto, right? So where we navigate to a specific URL. In this case, that's going to be https reddit.com. So what I'm going to do now is I could add a little, this is just my preference of how I go about this kind of stuff. I'm just going to do an await page .wait for timeout and just wait for 5 seconds there. Again, this guy here, this is the bad guy. don't use this in production. This is just for me to have those 5 seconds so I'm not in a rush and I can see what the script is actually doing every time I run it iteratively. At the end, when the script is in place, we're going to delete that, and you should never use this in a serious script. Use it while you're debugging, while you're writing the script like we're doing here, then forget about it. I mean, don't forget about it, take it out. Don't forget to take it out of your script. So we save the file, and all right, we start new terminal here, and we're gonna just run our little script. All right, and to start off, we forgot that little semicolon. Now we can see that the script is indeed loading reddit.com, pretty much as expected. We've got our cookie notice down there, and everything looks pretty much fine. All right, so what do we do next? Well, let's start over. This is where we land, pretty much. I think we can ignore the cookie, the cookie notice this time. It's not like covering anything important. And I think you can just go ahead and hit the search and then type Playwright in there, right? Which means, let's see, maybe this time I don't forget to make that bigger. Let me just try and make the most of the screen's real estate here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna, as you've seen, we open up our developer tools here. We're gonna just select the search bar there, and we see how things are looking. All right, so first off, we've got an ID there on the input element, which is, it's a very good sign if you ask me. So we're gonna just definitely try to use that. You know, I could test it out in console, of course, just do something like, actually, let's go ahead and test that. Just use the CSS selector. So that's an ID. And of course, we that means we have to use the hash sign in front of it. All right, let's see how many elements respond to that, and it is 1. Just a heads up, there are web pages out there you might be using every day which are not going to have unique IDs, which makes them, not correct HTML. You have to be careful what your assumptions are, right? You might assume that something is identified by an ID, and you're like, oh, IDs are supposed to be unique, so I trust that this is unique. And then you get like 70 elements returned to you because that ID is actually generated by some tool in the background when the page gets built, and that messes everything up, as you find out rather quickly. So better safe than sorry. Just do the $$ here and see if you have multiple elements returned for that ID. And of course, this is even truer when you're looking for other like when you're using other kinds of selectors like class selectors and so on and so forth. So in this case, anyway, we are lucky. We've got our single element here, and I believe that is the exact element we're looking for. Yeah, up there in the top left, you can see it highlighted. And we're just going to use that selector, and we're going to fill that field with our search term. So that's going to be, I'm going to wait page dot, sorry, not click, I said fill. And fill takes the selector first, so we're going to add, why am I using double quotes? I've never used double quotes. All right. So we go with our selector, and then we pass the string. String's going to be Playwright. And I guess after that we have a couple of things that we can try. We could click, I guess there must be a search icon there. Oh no, you have to press enter, I guess, or select. Actually, let's try to select the first result that comes up there. Let's make this a little bit more interesting. Yeah, I think we're gonna do that. But let's first run, so let's stay true to the iterative nature of this endeavor and just run the script with our new instruction there. And we can see we're typing into the field without any issues. That's great. What we're going to do next is we're going to try and select the element that is popping up in the search. This is not the easiest way to go about it. You could just press enter on the keyboard. But what we're going to do here is just try it the hard way, just because I'm curious to see if we manage. All right, what's this about? Okay, we're inspecting now the drop-down content here. And it's always useful to, not rush too much into things, get the structure of the, let's say maybe the container or, the section, the div, in this case, of the page that you're looking at. Like you go up one level from the element that you need to select and you understand exactly how things are looking. So if you're new to this kind of thing, you make use of the highlight function here. You can collapse and explode different elements in the Elements tab, and always keep an eye on the left to see what you're highlighting here. And in this case, we're going after a pretty easy, pretty easy case, I would say. We are going to select the first result there. In this case, we have an ARIA label that we could very well use. So we already know that we're going after our Playwright. That's the name of the subreddit, which needs to be unique, as far as I know. At least the ARIA label, I would expect to be fairly certain that's going to be unique. And I'm going to use that. I think we can just try it out. And I believe that should a click on an element identified by that ARIA label selector should take us straight to where we want to be, right? So if I click that, boom, we're already in the subreddit. And then we can go on with our assertion, essentially. So let's go back here and do an await page.click. And this is going to be ARIA label equals our Playwright. And let's give this another go. All right, we got a slash character in there. I think in this case, what you might want to try and do is wrap the value of the ARIA label there. I'm gonna hit Control C to quit and now restart our script execution, and that worked out just fine, right? So if you have an error, on selectors and you're pretty sure that the syntax is fine, we can just quickly check the Playwright docs, and they have some great material on selectors. They have a whole guide here, and we can check here if we're doing things all right. And of course, there's like the MDN docs on CSS selectors, which would be, of course, also a great resource. If you're sure that the syntax of the selector is mostly fine, make sure that if you have a weird value, or something with a symbol inside, that might be messing things up, right? So if you get something like this, like, hey, that's not a valid selector, then try playing around with it. In this case, it was pretty easy thing to do, to just wrap that. So that fixed our issue here, and now we're pretty much in the point where we can do our assertion. So far so good. Again, back to inspection mode. We're already in the our Playwright subreddit. Just gonna select that. All right, this might be interesting. There's a bunch of ways that we can do this. I mean, so what we have here is not localized. By I'm accessing this from Germany, this is not gonna change to the German translation or anything like that. This is a static string of text, and we could rely on that fact and, let's say, look that string of text up, see if there's one on the page, and then say, hey, that's good enough. That's an option. The issue there is, of course, somebody might kind of game this by having a post which contains the "giving hope to writers" ! String. That would have to be an H1 though, or well, if we were searching for text, that would work. Like, that would sabotage our assertion. But what we can do is restrict that to an H1. An H1, I'm pretty sure, is going to be not something that a post title can be. That's going to be an H3. So we are going to work with the text content plus the type of element, in this case of the header element. I'm curious to see what I always wonder like when are the DevTools gonna propose to me a good selector and when not. So sometimes I just like to right click the element and see, copy, then go to selector and see what comes out. And I'm just gonna paste that up there in the top bar. Oof. All right, no, that's definitely not the good kind of selector. It's essentially copying the whole chain from the first element that's got an ID all the way down. I'm pretty sure we can do something better than that. I mean, that's pretty disastrous. That's huge and yeah, not very good looking. And I'm pretty sure that a small layout change would break that. So what I'm gonna do here is just gonna first off, I want to see how many H1 elements are there. Of course, it's gonna just return 1, and this is gonna return me all the H1 elements. And well, in this case, what we're gonna check is that that's the right H1. Yeah, we're pretty lucky, honestly. The structure of the page here is definitely not, the page is not going out of its way to create issues for us. So we can just kind of use that and go back to our script. And well, there's a bunch of things that we can do here. We might want to use an assertion library, for example, something like jest, and build a let's say proper assertion for this. What I can do is, in this case, also keep things a little bit easier and just do an await page dot wait for a selector. We're gonna wait for the H1 there. We could call that title element, and let us just print out title element plus dot text content. That should be, and run the whole thing. And we had to add an await there because, of course, we were not awaiting the promise there. But what's interesting is that we actually get Playwright here as a value, and I think I know why. I just think that that's actually, if I saw this, I think I saw that at some point just being dynamically changed as the page loaded. So I think this might be a case of Playwright being too fast, let's say, for its own good in a way. So let's just add, and again, this is not something that's gonna stay there. This is just for me to verify what we're looking at here. What if we add like a 2-second delay just before we get actually the element, just to be sure? How is that gonna look like? Is that gonna print out Playwright still? Am I imagining things? You see, a little bit unexpected, but yeah, fair enough. So let us remove this wait for timeout. Maybe there's a different way, a different waiting strategy that we can use here to wait until everything has been done there. Maybe we could just, there's always when it's up to waiting in a flexible manner. There's always a few different possibilities that we have. In this case, I'm gonna use, let's see, maybe an await page dot wait for load state, I believe. And in this case, I want to wait really until, well, I guess this would wait until load by default. So I guess we could, I think that works also without any arguments. Let me try. Let me see if I remember that correctly. Let's see what that prints out. All right, this still prints out Playwright. What we could do is we could try to make this stricter and not wait until load, but until network idle. So until the network has become fully idle. And in this case, we seem to be getting the right string. So the one that gets loaded dynamically, right? So giving hope to writers. That's what we're looking for. All right, so we've already made things cleaner. We don't need to use a wait for timeout there. I mean, then if the only way for us to make the script work were to leave in a wait for timeout, I would not call that a production script. So again, that would not mean a successful live automation case here. So, okay, we can now essentially go on and do our last step here. And what I would do is, instead of logging that out, I would actually take that element of the text content. Let's give it its own constant. We're gonna make it title text. All right. Actually, at this point, let's take the chance to write a proper assertion here. We could use something like chai, for example. You can just import the assert module. And of course, we'll need to do an npm i chai. And right now, I cannot recall the exact syntax of the assert here. There's a few different things that we can do. We could specify just the expression there and a message in case of failure. Or I prefer the equal form, actually. So we first enter the actual value, that would be title text, the expected value, which we're gonna get from the page again, giving hope to writers. That's it. And everything seems to be working fine. Of course, we were waiting for some extra time there because we have that ugly wait for timeout. We're now kind of closing into a functional script, so we take that out, we run the whole thing again. And it seems to work just fine. And now the next step is, can we have the whole thing running just in headless mode? And that seems to work fine. So let's take a look at this again. The selectors seem fine. The flow seems to be fine. The weighting seems to be fine. We did not forget anything in there, right? What we can do is do a little stress testing of this script. Something that I like to do, you know, when I have just written a brand new script and I want to have some initial level of confidence that it is going to be reliable enough. What I do in those cases is just do a while node script.js semicolon, do, then colon, semicolon, and then done. And what this does is it's gonna keep on running that script over and over again until, you know, there's a failure. If there's a failure, I'm gonna see that. The error is gonna be printed out here. So what I do normally is, actually, let's take a look at this. I just quit this with Control C. Let's go back and add in that headless false up there. I'm gonna save the file again, and now we run this new command again. And what you will see is that essentially things here will keep on going automatically. We'll have the script executed in a while loop, and you know the same works. This works the same way, of course, if we're running headless. This is just to illustrate the point. But of course, what I do is I kind of let this run. You know, I go get myself a cup of coffee. I come back after a few minutes, and you know, if I have no error message there, then this, you know, I'm confident to a point that this is a stable enough script to see some maybe some production action. So getting this one script down and having it running reliably turned out to be pretty easy. I mean, it was not a long user flow. What we should do is try something longer, something more complex. And we're gonna take a look at that in the second part of this video. What I want to mention is very important. This is an automation tool that we're using here, Playwright, right? So it does what we tell it to. You know, we want to not create any issues when we are trying out our scripts here, right? And especially you want to be, of course, conscious of what you're doing as you write these, and how many times you run them and so on, what kind of traffic you're creating, what kind of things you're doing with the website. Of course, there is a potential for malicious use, right? You can write bots, you can write scrapers, you can do all sorts of things, right? The important thing is these videos are not about teaching folks how to abuse websites and any sort of system. It's not about using tools like Playwright and browser automation tools for malicious purposes. This is really about use cases such as testing and monitoring, synthetic monitoring specifically. So we're gonna take a look at a few other things, maybe to log in or to register accounts on Reddit or something like that. I haven't decided yet. But of course, when you go and do things that do have like a larger impact on whatever backend is serving the service that you're running automation against, then ask yourself a few questions. And oftentimes you will see that things become harder, of course, once you go past that login screen, right? And in a lot of cases, it makes sense for it to be tougher to automate as well. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in part 2 of our Reddit Automate Together.